Liège, Belgium. The year is 1605. A child is born beneath a shadow so heavy it clings to her name even now. From the very beginning she was different. Villagers swore they saw her eyes gleam in the dark, reflecting flames that weren't there. When she passed, dogs howled, candles guttered, and sometimes, just sometimes, the air itself seemed to bend around her. Her name? Anne de Chantraine. As the child grew into a little girl and then into a young lady, the mystical was never far away. They said herbs moved when she touched them, that powders stirred without a breeze, that when she whispered, something whispered back. Would you have noticed? Or would you have turned away, crossing yourself in silence? By the time she was 17, Anne's fascination with what she called the unseen had grown impossible to ignore. Neighbours swore they caught her in the forests, barefoot under the moon, chanting in words no one could understand. Others spoke of talismans she gave to the sick, trinkets that healed some and left others dying. But the scariest of all whispers were the ones that said that Anne didn't always walk alone, that shadows moved with her, that shapes without faces lingered behind her when she thought no one was looking. In January 1622, it was enough. The law came. Anne was dragged in chains to Ware-la-Chaussée, accused of consorting with the devil himself. The list of charges was long: spells, hexes, curses, the death of a young girl, the gathering in the woods, the powders, the eyes. Under the weight of torture, she confessed, every word dripping with fear. Did she really meet the devil at a crossroads? Did she fly by moonlight on a storm wind? Did she kill? Did she heal? We'll never know, but her fate was sealed. October 17th, 1622. They marched her to the stake, just 17 years old. 17! The crowd pressed close, hungry, afraid, relieved it wasn't them. The flames licked upwards, her body twisted, her voice rose above the crackling wood. Some swore she cursed the crowd with her dying breath. Others claimed her eyes burnt brighter than the fire itself, and a few, a trembling few, whispered that she did not scream at all, that she only laughed. The fire burned away her flesh, but it could not burn away her story. Because Anne de Chantraine did not stay in 1622. According to the legends, she walks still, through the forests, through your dreams, through the faint static between whispers in the dark. Even today, centuries later, her name summons shivers. A girl turned legend, a child turned witch. And some say, if you walk through Liège on a cold October night, you may feel her breath on your neck, a reminder that fire cannot kill a shadow. Wow, that really is quite the tale. And like many of you, the first time I heard the name Anne de Chantraine wasn't in a dusty old history book, but it was in the 1990s when she popped up in the VHS video board game Atmosphere. Yes, my gatekeeper. For those of you who never played it, Atmosphere was this creepy time-based board game where you'd stick a VHS tape in the machine and the gatekeeper, this terrifying half-decayed host, would just shout commands at you through the TV and quite often just call you a maggot. It was campy, creepy and absolutely unforgettable. And there, among the lineup of twisted characters you could play as, was Anne de Chantraine, a vengeful witch, forever bound to the game, lurking alongside Baron Samedi, Elizabeth Bathory and other notorious figures. And that's how most of us met her, as a pop culture phantom, as a character designed to scare kids in their living rooms. But here's the thing, Anne de Chantraine wasn't just the invention of the game designers, she was real, a flesh and blood teenager from 17th century Belgium whose story ends in fire and screams. And once you start digging, the game version of Anne suddenly feels a lot less like fantasy and a lot more like a haunting echo. Because behind the plastic game pieces and VHS tape was a girl who lived Anne died in terror, and her story is far darker than atmosphere ever even dared to show us. So I suppose the big question now is, why Anne? When we look at other witch hunts over the years, we've got obviously the Salem witch trials. The children blamed Tituba. It was the house servant at first, which is, fairly self-explanatory. Children have very vivid imaginations, and it's not hard to understand where that one came from. We look over at the UK, over at the Gothland witch. She had a deformity on her eye, which was called the devil's eye. Not hard to see why people accused her of witchcraft. But Anne, this little girl in Liège. And the truth is, Anne de Chantraine wasn't unique. In the early 1600s, thousands of women and some men were accused of witchcraft across Europe. But there's something about a story that clings, something that sticks in the imagination. Maybe it's her age, just 17 years old. Young enough to still be a child, but old enough to be feared as a woman. And that's a dangerous place to stand in a world ruled by suspicion. Or maybe it's the details that surfaced in her trial. Herbs, powders, rituals under the moon. Simple, ordinary things twisted into evidence of the devil's touch. What was medicine to one villager became poison to another. What was whispered in prayer became a curse when fear got involved. And then, of course, there's the darker question. Did Anne de Chantraine really believe in witchcraft? When she confessed under interrogation, was she admitting to the crimes, or was she a terrified teenager saying whatever her captors needed to hear to make the pain stop? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Confessions of witchcraft weren't really about guilt. They were about control, fear, power. The villagers feared what they didn't understand, and the authorities needed someone to blame. And Anne was convenient. But here's where it gets under your skin. Plenty of women are burned as witches. Plenty of names are lost to time. So why does Anne de Chantraine's name linger centuries later? Why does her story survive in folklore, in pop culture, even in a board game? Is it because she was one of the youngest? Because her trial records left just enough detail to ignite the imagination? Or is it because, deep down, we still wonder, what if the villagers were right? What if Anne really did walk with the shadows? Anne de Chantraine was proof that stories fade but shadows linger. If you enjoyed this post, please do give us a like, please do subscribe to the channel, and join us again for more spooky stories at hauntic.com.